It doesn't matter how big the ministry is. It doesn't matter the impact that you're making. It is never okay to cover something up, protect the image of a ministry.
After years of silence, threats, and alleged attempts to suppress him, Jonathan Lamb is finally speaking publicly. Stripped of his title, pushed away from the ministry, and excluded from his mother's final days, he is now telling his story through his own podcast and channel. What happens when someone once protected by a powerful family institution begins revealing what happened behind closed doors? Jonathan's story goes beyond personal loss. It raises difficult questions about control, loyalty, accountability, and the fractures inside Daystar. As he speaks on his own terms, the truth may prove harder to contain than anyone expected. The weight of silence. Jonathan Lamb carried a heavy silence for over a year after publicly revealing his forced exit from Daystar television network. From November 2024 through December 2025, his voice was largely absent, not because he lacked questions or concerns, but because speaking out carried severe consequences. His mother, Joni Lamb, was still alive and publicly opposing him, labeling his allegations a smear campaign and using Daystar's vast platform to discredit him. To speak against her during that time would have worsened an already devastating family rift and intensified legal battles. Every word Jonathan might have said risked fueling the ongoing conflict and providing ammunition for counterclaims. He knew that airing grievances openly could disrupt potential reconciliation or invite more public scrutiny on deeply personal matters. Instead, he chose a strategic restraint, sharing evidence discreetly with investigative journalists and watchdog groups, but keeping his own voice largely silent to avoid escalating tensions further. His silence was not passivity, but a calculated decision shaped by the painful reality of family, legacy, and legal entanglements. The emotional toll of watching his mother continue to oppose him publicly was immense. Yet Jonathan weighed the potential fallout from speaking out. The simmering conflict extended beyond personal wounds. It involved an institution, the ministry his parents built, that was intertwined with his family's identity. This quiet period kind of created a complex background where truth existed, but it also stayed unspoken in public talk. Jonathan's silence made the questions around Daystar and his family grow louder, but it also put off their answers. Supporting documents, recordings, and insider accounts were passed around privately, in a way that suggested deeper fractures. Still, the whole story stayed stuck behind barriers nobody really named. It basically set things up for a dramatic shift when the silence finally broke. Even with all that silence, Jonathan was far from inactive. He carefully preserved evidence of the abuses and injustices he claimed. Papers showing salary cuts, surveillance attempts, and decisions meant to keep him out of key family moments. Each piece was like a direct pushback against the story that tried to shape Daystar's public image. But since he didn't put his own voice into the conversation, those revelations didn't fully catch the attention they deserved, not the way they might have. So there was this ongoing tension between staying quiet and then saying everything. Supporters and observers were left with that annoying limbo of wondering what truths were being withheld. How much had Jonathan taken on? And why hadn't he spoken sooner? That tension became a kind of quiet testimony to the power struggles, the legal threats, and the emotional wreckage that silenced a man who had once been integral to one of the largest Christian networks. And the weight of Jonathan's silence wasn't just the missing words. It was the presence of suppressed pain, strategic planning, and unresolved conflict. That silence, almost as much as any formal statement, would end up defining the early years of his fallout with Daystar, and it also hinted at the bigger reckoning still ahead. The moment when Jonathan chose to break this long-held silence brought with it both relief and shock, signaling a new chapter in a story many thought was closed. The breaking point. The turning point came with the death of Joni Lamb on May 7, 2026, a moment that shifted not only Jonathan's personal life, but also his public stance. With his mother's passing, the legal and emotional barriers to speaking openly began to fall away. The threat of non-disclosure agreements lost much of its power, and the family conflict that had kept Jonathan's voice muted could no longer be used to justify silence. Jonathan did not immediately explode into public denunciations or dramatic revelations. Instead, his silence broke quietly through a deliberate and slow process of rebuilding in full view of an attentive public. He launched the Lamb podcast and a YouTube channel that belongs solely to him and his wife, Susie. Platforms free from interference by boards, NDAs, or legal restrictions tied to Daystar. This new space allowed Jonathan to tell his story on his terms, without filters or censorship. His first public remarks touched on questions that were sort of long whispered by viewers and followers. You know, the whole thing about family disputes, investigations that seemed to just get abruptly shut down, and that strange surveillance aimed at his family. Jonathan admitted that the evidence he'd shared in private was now being dragged into the light, and he insisted it was real, authentic. He talked carefully, like really carefully, pulling a line between what he could say and what legal realities constrained him to keep behind closed doors. That measured approach surprised a lot of people inside Christian media, not only because of what Jonathan said, but because of how he took control of his own story. Instead of racing to file lawsuits or launching some competing television network, he built a conversation platform. He was offering clarity, community, and a kind of rebuilding rather than confrontation. For those who felt betrayed by the slow collapse of Daystar's original mission, this shift felt profound, like a turning page. It was a dialogue many had been wanting, but thought was gone for good. Jonathan's return to the public arena carried a double meaning too. Personal liberation, yes, and at the same time a challenge to the institution that tried to quiet him. By speaking plainly and in a way that actually felt like him, he got his voice back and reopened the conversation around the family's fractured legacy. His emergence pushed others toward a reckoning, not only about what happened out of sight, behind closed doors, but also about what the ministry was becoming and what that meant for its supporters. Even though Jonathan's breaking point arrived with grief and loss, it also seemed to start a journey shaped by openness and resilience. His story wasn't locked up in rumors, whispers, and leaked documents anymore. Instead, it was unfolding publicly, in front of millions of people who had questions and needed answers. This newfound voice opened the door to a deeper exploration of the substantial evidence underlying Jonathan's claims, evidence that upended public perceptions and challenged Daystar in ways it could not easily dismiss. The evidence and allegations. Jonathan Lamb brought to light a range of documented claims that paint a stark picture of what he endured, including severe pay cuts, invasive surveillance, and obstructed investigations. His salary reportedly dropped from $250,000 to $150,000, a 40% cut, while loans worth millions flowed to his sisters' families. These disparities raised troubling questions about fairness and favoritism within the ministry's leadership and financial dealings. Among the most startling allegations was the placement of a GPS tracking device on Jonathan's company car. Purchased in October 2023 and installed by Daystar's head of security, this device was later found by a mechanic, and Jonathan captured video evidence of its installation. This surveillance was accompanied by a private investigator trailing his family, an extraordinary measure reflecting deep internal conflict and distrust. Simultaneously, investigations into serious family allegations were said to have been prematurely halted. Records and testimonies indicate that key witnesses, such as his father-in-law Pete, were not properly interviewed, and the entire inquiry was shut down earlier than expected. These actions suggested an intentional effort to suppress damaging information and protect certain parties within the ministry. Jonathan also revealed sharp tensions in family and ministry relationships, with his wife losing her position and close family members experiencing demotions and firings. These moves appeared part of a broader pattern to push him out and control the narrative. The most painful of all was exclusion from his mother's final moments and memorial, where his name went unspoken except in a pre-recorded tribute. Throughout these disclosures, Jonathan produced recordings, official documents, and other materials that support his account. Despite Daystar's repeated denials and accusations of smear campaigns, none of these claims have been publicly disproven. Instead, the institution has largely remained silent or defensive, deepening suspicion and eroding trust among supporters. The weight and variety of evidence Jonathan presented drew increased attention from investigative journalists and accountability groups, adding pressure on Daystar to address allegations many could no longer ignore. His meticulously documented experience became a focal point for understanding the ministry's unraveling behind the scenes. These revelations not only underscore the personal and financial costs Jonathan faced, but also reflect systemic complexities in a once prominent ministry now grappling with legacy, leadership, and accountability. As his story unfolds publicly, it challenges the narrative of unity and faith once associated with Daystar. Jonathan's growing voice now resonates on platforms he controls, shaping a new chapter that demands both reflection and response. The new platform and vision. Jonathan and Susie Lamb's response to years of silence and conflict took the form of a fresh, unconventional ministry, a podcast and YouTube channel they fully control. Unlike a traditional ministry with headquarters, a governing board, and fundraising appeals, the Lamb Podcast is a simple but powerful space for honest conversation. It's where faith, personal experience, and transparency intersect, drawing in listeners who crave truth over polish. This approach shocked many in the Christian media world, not because it's flashy, but because it's deeply authentic and relational. Their platform rejects the typical formulas of Christian networks, opting instead for a community built on openness and healing. Jonathan and Susie openly discuss the personal costs of their journey, the faith it's taken to stand firm amid battles with an institution bearing their family name. This style appeals to those who have felt disillusioned by broken leadership and hidden stories. It's a place for betrayed believers seeking not just answers, but shared understanding and hope. This new ministry isn't about reclaiming a corporate empire or legal victories. Instead, it's about building something that cannot be taken away by lawsuits, non-disclosure agreements, or tracking devices. The movement is grassroots, depending on listeners who want to hear the unvarnished truth and relate to the human stories behind the headlines. That audience, already engaged and loyal, represents a community many believed Daystar had lost. Jonathan's channel marks a shift from silence to openness and from sidelining to leadership on his own terms. It's a defiant act of truth-telling with a broad-reaching impact, breaking the hold of institutional control. By refusing to settle lawsuits and sign NDAs, Jonathan's choice establishes a lasting record, accessible to anyone willing to listen. This public transparency brings accountability beyond courtrooms and corporate offices into the heart of his listeners' homes. Podcast format is like it gives you flexibility and also longevity, kind of the same way a road keeps going after you turn. The episodes touch on faith, healing, and those complex, often painful realities that showed up after 3 years of conflict with Daystar. Jonathan and Susie invite listeners into their world, and they're sharing what accountability really is. You know, after years of betrayal and ongoing struggle. It's a blend of testimony, gentle encouragement, and reflection. Not the same as those neat segments you usually see. It makes a space that's pretty rare in mainstream Christian media. When they launched, the reaction was pretty immediate, like within days. Media outlets that are pretty familiar with covering Christian leadership troubles recognized it mattered. Instead of taking the easy route, lawsuits or hostile takeover talk, the coverage leaned more toward relief and hope. People sounded grateful that Jonathan wasn't silenced, and glad those pressure campaigns had come up empty. Also, that a genuine conversation actually started. That kind of reception, it shows how strong a quietly resilient voice can be, even when the whole landscape is packed with spectacle. And by setting up this platform, Jonathan and Susie basically carved out an alternative to that corporate ministry model, the one tangled up in controversy and legal mess. Their ministry feels like a beacon for people who think they've been left behind or sidelined after they were hurt by institutions they once trusted. It's also a reminder that faith communities can keep breathing, and yes, even thrive, when honesty and vulnerability are taken seriously, and when folks are willing to face difficult truths right on, not tiptoe around them. This ministry isn't only a new chapter for Jonathan and Susie, it's also kind of a challenge to both the media and the church. Like, listen more carefully and honor those stories that don't fit inside easy narratives. And that means more than headlines. It calls for continued engagement, touching the real human cost of division and the silence that follows it for a long time. Jonathan's emergence with this new platform opened the door for deeper questions about what has happened within Daystar and the family at its core, and invited those questions into the light. Impact on the ministry and family. Jonathan Lamb's departure from Daystar has revealed problems that appear to extend far beyond a simple business dispute. His decision to speak publicly has challenged the image of unity and stability the ministry presented for years. What was once seen as a closely connected family network now faces questions about leadership, transparency, and internal loyalty. The ministry is also struggling with uncertainty about its future. Leadership changes, unexplained exclusions, and limited public information have raised concerns among staff, supporters, and longtime viewers. Jonathan and Susie's departure became a visible sign of deeper tension, while questions about executive leadership and board oversight have added to the confusion. Inside the Lamb family, the damage is especially painful. Jonathan's estrangement from his sisters and his reported exclusion from his mother's final days and memorial reflect a major breakdown in personal relationships. The shared mission that once united the family has been replaced by distance, suspicion, and silence. Daystar supporters are now divided. Some remain loyal to the current leadership, while others believe Jonathan's claims deserve closer examination. His podcast has also given a platform to people who say they felt ignored or silenced within the ministry. Questions about financial decisions, including alleged loans and concerns about accountability, have created even more scrutiny. These issues have placed pressure on Daystar to defend its leadership, protect its reputation, and reassure donors. The conflict shows how deeply family disputes can affect organizations built around faith and personal legacy. Daystar continues to operate, but concerns about trust, leadership, and integrity remain. Jonathan's continued public presence keeps those questions alive, forcing both the family and ministry to confront unresolved issues. His story has become part of a larger conversation about transparency, accountability, and the consequences of placing image above truth within powerful religious organizations and influential family institutions. From Jonathan's defiant platform to Daystar's shifting shores, the tension between truth and silence remains unresolved, setting the stage for what comes next. The personal cost and ongoing fight. Jonathan Lamb's decision to break decades of silence has come with a heavy personal price. Beyond the public dispute with Daystar, the conflict has deeply divided his family. His once close relationship with his siblings, Rachel and Rebecca, appears to have broken down, replacing years of unity with distance and silence. One of the most painful moments came during his mother's final days. Jonathan says he was never informed about her declining health and only learned of her passing through legal channels. At her memorial service, he sat apart from the family, and his name was largely absent from the tributes, highlighting just how isolated he had become. For Jonathan, the emotional wounds seem to have been just as painful as the professional losses. The conflict has also kind of tangled up Jonathan's young daughter, who ended up caught in allegations and a sort of public uproar that, honestly, no child should ever have to go through. At the same time, Jonathan claims he lost his position at the ministry. His income was drastically cut, and he got shoved out of the organization his parents actually founded. In his version of events, his wife also lost her job, and his father-in-law was hit with demotions and eventual termination. Still, Jonathan says he managed to keep documents, recordings, and other proof that relate to what he's saying. Instead of staying silent, Jonathan made the decision to go public. He refused understandings and arrangements that would have made him keep quiet, and he chose a podcast plus an online platform with Susie. Through that setup, he shares what happened, and he keeps documenting events the way he sees them. Even now, a bunch of questions are still left hanging, not answered. Legal issues, family fractures, and worries about transparency keep feeding the conversation. Jonathan says his intention isn't just to tell his own story, but also to push for accountability and to help protect others from running into similar experiences. So whether you call him a whistleblower or just a family member who is deeply divided, his story has already opened up a wider discussion about faith, legacy, and how important it is to keep things transparent inside powerful ministries. Jonathan Lamb's story is a powerful reminder that silence cannot protect broken truths forever. His courage to speak out reveals a ministry and family deeply fractured, yet still searching for justice, accountability, and healing. If you found this story insightful, please like and subscribe for more honest stories that matter. Thank you for watching. And before you go, click the next video on your screen to uncover another story that deserves to be heard.